Welcome to a reading of a sample of my book to be published this year, 2016, by Illuminatopia, the organization I founded, which is focused on illuminating or lighting the way to utopia for individuals, organizations, and the rest of society. The title of my book is My Year with Dr. Eli Goldratt, and this is the latest draft of the first 2 chapters and prologue of the book. Greatest lessons learned from Eli Goldratt, a business guru, best-selling author of The Goal, a novel which has been required reading in many business schools in the world, educator and philosopher. By me, Lisa Ann Ferguson, MBA, PhD. I was a former university business school professor for a decade, teaching operations management. And the date of this latest draft is yesterday, May 1st, 2015. Here are some testimonials for me, which are also posted on my LinkedIn profile, from several people who have been a key part of the TOC community, or Theory of Constraints, which is the management philosophy and philosophy of life and set of applications that was created by Eli. So, prologue. Eli Goldratt's 1947 to 2011 goal in life was to teach the world to think. This goal led him to create a unified field theory of management and philosophy of life named the Theory of Constraints, or TOC. TOC has touched the lives of millions of people and thousands of organizations worldwide in a very positive way. Dr. Eli Goldratt was an educator, philosopher, business guru, and best-selling author of The Goal, a novel which is included in the listing of the top 100 business books of all time. Has sold over 5 million copies and has been translated into 35 languages and is required reading in many business schools. So the story goes back to March 2007 in Los Angeles, California. I, along with many other members of the Goldratt Group, was in Pasadena to attend Eli's one-day public seminar titled Viable Vision Offer Event and celebrate his 60th birthday. As Eli and I walked to his suite to join his special assistant Wendy Maxwell to read some of his latest writing, he said, "Lisa, you don't look happy. Is it my fault, or is there something I can do to fix it?" I replied, "You're not the cause, but you can do something to fix it. You could agree to teach me how to write." For years, I had been planning to ask him to do so. I finally decided to take the plunge, figuring I had nothing to lose by asking. I felt it was the best time to make my request. Eli quickly responded, "Interesting." Eli was a tour de force, a brilliant man with an incredibly powerful logical mind. He had earned a PhD in physics in Israel as part of his strategic plan to teach the world to think. His laboratory was the business world because any hypotheses could be quickly tested to further develop his scientific approach to thinking more clearly. Eli's hair was dark and curly, his smile often wide and bright when sharing time with those he loved, which included his family from the Goldratt Group too. His appearance for work consisted of a yarmulke to signify his Jewish religious affiliation, a white long-sleeve button-down dress shirt, belted black slacks with matching dress shoes of an old, more comfortable style with shoelaces. This became his uniform because it was easy to pack, multiples of each, and not have to worry about looking good. I had heard from others of his clothing choices long before I met him, were not very appealing to the eye. And there you can see the footnotes or the reference of the top 100 best business books of all time. What they say, why they matter, and how they can help you. I knew that Eli's response to my request could mean anything. Since I had started working with him in 2002, consulting for a Fortune 500 company, and later joined Goldratt Group as a faculty member in 2005, I was aware that he was utilizing the time to think about my request. After a short period of deliberation, he said, "We will need to discuss this with Wendy." Wendy Maxwell had been Eli's special assistant for over 2 decades. It turns out that I was under consideration for becoming his additional assistant because much of his time writing was done on the road, since he averaged over 200 days a year away from his home in Farsava, Israel, outside of Tel Aviv. Eli needed a new one because his other assistant had resigned, and Wendy was no longer able to travel with him. I became aware that both Eli and Wendy would be deciding whether or not I passed their tests regarding being an effective assistant and learning how to write. Eli later told me that I was, quote, crashing through an open door, end quote, with my request for several reasons. I was already known for, quote unquote, excellent note-taking skills, as evidenced by his past review of some 2-hour meeting notes I had written for Goldratt Consulting, as part of my efforts to further develop my knowledge and skills in training TOC experts. In addition, he told me he knew that I was already able to effectively read text in which every word counts. Several years later, I found out shortly after Eli passed away in 2011 that Dr. Alan Leader, a former colleague of mine from Goldratt Schools, had highly recommended me when Eli asked him who would be an effective assistant for him. Note, Alan was relieved to know that I was grateful for his recommendation. Little did I know how tremendous the impact of my request would be on my life in more ways than one. I ended up spending a year working one-on-one with Eli as his apprentice. Prior to working with him, I was a business school professor of operations management for a decade. What I learned from Eli and his materials, after I began intensely studying them starting in 1997, exponentially increased my knowledge and ability to improve operations, in addition to thinking and writing more clearly/logically. He became a close friend of mine, a great mentor, and was in some ways like a father to me since I was 20 years younger than him. I decided to write this book to enable you to know Eli, the man behind the legend, and the greatest lessons I learned from my time with him about how to live a more meaningful or full life. And here's a picture of Eli and I taken in 2002 when we were working on that Fortune 500 consulting project, taken by Alan Bernard. Chapter 1. My first test in Colombia and Ecuador in April 2007. Within minutes of my request, Wendy and Eli had decided that I would have a test trip in April as Eli's assistant. I flew to Colombia a day before Eli to rest and be prepared for when he arrived. We would have almost a week together, during which I had to pass both his and Wendy's tests. I was feeling both nervous and excited. While I had spent time with Eli in the past 5 years, I still did not know him very well. We were scheduled to spend 3 days in Medellin, followed by 3 days in Guayaquil, Ecuador. Javier Arevalo, the Goldratt Consulting Regional Director for Latin America, and my dear friend, and I went to pick Eli up at the airport in the early evening on Sunday, April 22nd. I greeted Eli with 3 alternating cheek kisses and a hug. He was like a teddy bear who really enjoyed being affectionate with those he cared about. Goldratt Group was like a family. We loved, or at least liked each other, supported each other, and worked hard, preferably while having fun. The three of us enjoyed talking for a while in Ellie's suite before he decided he was ready to sleep. Ellie and I discussed what some of the criteria were for me to pass their tests. To pass Wendy's test, I had to not only take very good care of Ellie as his assistant, but also be effective in motivating him to write. He told me that if I could get him to start and finish a paper of about 10 pages or more this week, Wendy would be ecstatic. He said that he needed to feel comfortable being with me since we would have to spend so much time together. Of course, I also had to pass his writing test. I was aware that he didn't tell me all the criteria regarding the tests I needed to pass. He told me that. On Monday, I started writing by myself a new paper titled How Do We Convince Others? To explain the newer TOC buying process, the plus, and compare and contrast it with the minus buying process, which had been successfully utilized in change management efforts of TOC for over 20 years. After I finished writing the first draft, Ellie reviewed it. He pointed out to me that he considered criticism of his writing to be a gift because of the opportunity to improve. He did not take it personally. This was not an easy lesson for me to learn because I was so sensitive and concerned with perfectionist standards for almost every part of my life. Eventually, I did learn it, though. And see, I've highlighted here a key lesson that I learned from Ellie, which is, just a reminder here, consider criticism of your writing or work to be a gift because of the opportunity to improve. Don't take it personally. Ellie explained to me that he hated to write, but felt compelled to do so with high quality in order to share his knowledge to achieve his goal of teaching the world to think. He labeled himself a quote-unquote master procrastinator, especially when it came to writing. I don't want you to get the impression that Ellie was lazy. That is far from the truth. He devoted a huge amount of time to his work. A part of him was motivated to write because he felt he had so much critical knowledge he had developed that he needed to share with others before he passed away. Since both his father and brother died in their early 60s, Ellie was concerned he might not have much time left since he was already 60 years old. On the other hand, he was demotivated because writing was such an effort, even with his tremendous level of skills and experience. Ellie explained to me that he wrote, rewrote, and polished his writing many times before sharing it with others, then further modified it based on their direct and indirect feedback. He pointed out that it was important to have others read his writing aloud so that he could monitor their body language and voice to be able to effectively identify areas for improvement. During our full 2 days in Medellin, Ellie conducted a full-day seminar, Viable Vision Offer event, and several 2-hour meetings. Since he didn't travel with a computer, mine was the one we used. During the seminar, I assisted Ellie by showing the slides and other files on the projected screen as needed. During the meetings, I took notes on my computer while Ellie was speaking. I had learned to become quite good at typing and editing the notes while listening, followed by doing some final editing shortly thereafter before sharing the other file with others. Ellie, Javier, and I got up very early on Wednesday morning to fly to Guayaquil. All of us were sleep deprived, but quote-unquote caviar, and I felt good and a little punchy while Ellie was still half asleep and somewhat grumpy. I started calling Javier by the name Caviar after I found out from him that Ellie used to call him that because he didn't or couldn't pronounce his name correctly. Javier and I enjoyed joking with each other. At Customs and Immigration, Javier and I had no problem getting through. We stood outside of the area watching Ellie's interrogation take longer than usual. So I just waited there while Javier went to provide support as he was much more fluent in Spanish than I. Finally, Ellie and Javier came to join me. I found out that the reason why Ellie was delayed was because his passport number was the same as some criminal in Colombia. So Javier and I joked aloud that Eli was public enemy number one of Columbia. Note, this is an inside joke because Eli gave a talk years ago declaring cost accounting to be public enemy number one of productivity in manufacturing. If I recall correctly, I don't think Eli thought it was funny. Of course, it may also have been due to the fact that he was also grumpy because he hadn't been able to smoke his pipe for a while. While we were sitting at a table in a cafe waiting for our flight, I asked Javier if he would be willing to read aloud the latest, fourth version of my paper. When he first started reading it, I noticed Eli was bored and not really focused on hearing it. But then suddenly I saw Eli was surprised by what was being read. I later found out he was concerned that my earlier versions of the paper indicated that I was not focused on ensuring my writing was geared to the audience. He was beginning to believe that I would not be capable of learning from him how to write. He was amazed to realize that I had a quote-unquote large comfort zone since I had dramatically changed the first paragraph of my paper and did so without him saying anything specific to guide me to modify it. After arriving at our hotel, we spent most of the day working. Eli started writing a new audit article for Goldratt Group that day, after I motivated him since one of my tests was his completing a paper before we left Ecuador. I typed while he spoke. At one point, we took a break to discuss how to write. After some time had passed, he asked me if I wanted us to talk more about writing in general. I told him that if doing so would help him write more of his paper, then I would agree. Otherwise, we should get back to work. He smiled while pointing out that I had passed one of his tests since I was clearly focused on the goal, the longer-term objective. We continued working on the audit article until he felt really tired. Late in the afternoon, Eli decided to take a 3-hour nap, after only having slept several hours the night before. During that time, I decided not to rest since I wanted to make sure that I did my best to pass all of their tests. Even though I was wiped out, I knew I could get away with a limited amount of sleep, at least for a short period of time. After Eli got up, we spent several more hours working on his paper before he felt the need to sleep again. It was now very early in the morning. I asked him how much sleep he needed. He said that 2 hours would be enough. I decided to set my alarm for 3 hours because I needed to get some sleep. I slept in my clothes on a long sofa in his suite, just in case he woke up early and was ready to start working again. I got up after my alarm went off. It took me almost an hour to get him up. Each time I tried to wake him, he would ask for a certain number of minutes to snooze. During one of those times, he started calling me Cruella. I later understood, after he explained it to me, that he had given me the title Cruella as in Ms. DeVille of the 101 Dalmatians movie by Disney, because I was, quote-unquote, cracking the whip to make the master procrastinator work. He was not upset with me, though. He was just giving me a nickname out of fondness and some level of admiration for my ability to effectively motivate him. Note, months later, I returned the favor by giving him a title to which he did not take too kindly to at first, but later enjoyed humorously telling the story to others. When I read aloud a newer version of his article, he told me to insert asterisks at various points in it. Then he asked me to explain in each case why he put them there. Basically, I needed to demonstrate that I understood what needed to change to make the paper flow better logically. I saw that he was pleased with all my answers. Later, Javier joined us so that we could conduct another 2-hour meeting and have a group discussion. While I was sitting on the sofa with him, Javier asked me once more to email him all the notes from the 2-hour meetings in Colombia. I responded, "If you ask me again, I will not share them with you. You will have to recreate them from memory." My reaction prompted a laugh from Eli and a concerned reaction from Javier, followed by relief when he realized that I was joking. I still had not been able to find the time to finish editing them, given my horrendously busy schedule. Later, Eli and I spent several hours at the villa of the CEO from for a pleasant dinner and conversation. He shared the story of how I earned the title of Cruella. Of course, he had to change it to make it more interesting and humorous. For example, he left out the part that he told me to wake him after 2 hours and that I gave him an extra hour to sleep. Very early in the morning on Sunday, April 29th, Ellie and I left to go to the airport to fly to our respective homes, mine being in Sedona, Arizona, with the views of beautiful red rocks and nature. While we were sitting at a table waiting for our flights, we continued working on his audit article. I was concerned that its length was just over 5 single-spaced pages. I had missed the target of a completed paper to pass Wendy's test. After I brought up this issue with Ellie, he told me not to be concerned because I had accomplished something, quote-unquote, incredible. Note, I hope you don't get the impression that I'm tooting my own horn. I'm telling the story of what happened with Ellie as honestly as I can to the best of my recollection. I'm not on an ego trip. I just believe that it's important to try to be as honest as you can and tell what has really happened, that a person can be humble but yet confident at the same time without being egotistical, that they're trying to puff themselves up. He pointed out that originally 2 full days were set aside for writing, but then more meetings and events were added to the schedule. He let me know that I had passed their first test with, quote, flying colors. Note, that audit article, which was titled Comfort Zone, was later revised for inclusion in his book, The Choice, which he wrote from start to finish during my year-long apprenticeship. The final version of that article was just over 10 pages long. Now we're going to fast forward a bit in time, which is about 4 years later. On Thursday, March 31st, 2011, at 3:31 p.m. Arizona time, I sent the following email message to Ellie. Ellie, I just had a wonderful lunch and time together with Lisa Scheinkoff. It was great to catch up with her. I gave her an update on some of my key activities as well. When I told her my view on my time working with you, she asked if I had told you. When I replied that I had not, she suggested that I let you know as a birthday gift. I thought it was a great idea. That is why I'm writing this message. I am now living a magical life. I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. I think that in all parts of my life, I'm living my best life yet, and that it will only continue to get better. The best is yet to come. I read somewhere recently a quote from an actress, Sarah Ramirez, who said, quote, I feel as if everything in my life and career has been leading up to this moment. The moment she was referring to was an episode of the TV show Grey's Anatomy, predicted to win her an award. She combined talents and gifts she had developed in her personal and professional life to play her part in that episode. I realized that the same is true for me. A few weeks ago, when I was home supporting my family in their time of need, I understood that what she said applies to me as well. The final jigsaw puzzle piece fell into place in which I could see the whole picture of my life, all the events, why they happened, what the results were. The culmination of all those events is the magical life that I am now living. This brings me to your role in this. I want to thank you for being a mentor to me. I learned an incredible amount of knowledge and skills from you. It was a difficult time for me after you fired me, but I now realize it was for the best. A good analogy is when an eagle pushes the young eagle out of the nest to fly. The young eagle struggles at first to learn to fly. When the young eagle is on its own, it can not only fly, but soar, like Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I am now soaring. I am excited about life. I now see how all the times I viewed as bad times were also some of the best times in my life, because they led me to where I am today. I am strong and noble. I have no regrets. I hope you have enjoyed your birthday. That was actually that day. I hear a Beatles song in my head, something about turning 64. How does it feel to be over the hill and down the valley? Lol. I think they need to have a font for humor/sarcasm. I may be a kid, but at least I'm not a fossil. I wish you all the best in the future. Warm regards, Lisa, aka Cruella. I joked with him because that was something he said before his son Rami was always giving him a hard time about being ancient, and was actually the first person to call him a fossil. Then, a matter of hours later, I received this response from Ellie. 3 words. I love you. Just 3 simple words. I knew what Ellie meant. He loved me as a person. There was nothing more that needed to be communicated to achieve closure in our relationship. Ellie and I did remain friends after my apprenticeship ended in 2008, while the mentoring relationship ended completely in early 2010. On April 20th, I sent my final email message to Ellie after I learned he had been diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. I offered healing services to him through the combined effort of an amazing doctor to whom I was engaged and me, because I had organized his healing approach logically in a transformational strategy and tactic tree in my head. I also forwarded the message to his daughter of thought to ensure that he would receive it. I learned from her that Ellie appreciated my offer but decided against it. I accepted his choice with no negative feelings, since I believe we should all have free will to choose how to live as long as we're not harming others. They may feel harmed, but at least if we're consciously choosing not to purposely hurt them, if they may feel upset about how we're choosing to live our lives. In this book, I focus on sharing stories of my time being Ellie's apprentice, interspersed with flashbacks and flash forwards to enable you to know the man behind the legend and what I learned from his philosophy of life and incorporated and adapted into my own. Thus, you can learn from Ellie, even though he is no longer with us, by seeing his life and understand his thinking through my mind and heart. Chapter 2, Farsava, Israel, September 2007, so several months have gone by now since I started in June as his apprentice. I stayed with Eli and his family at his home outside of Tel Aviv to continue our work when we were not on the road. I had been working as his apprentice for over 3 months. Eli and I sat in his office at his home in 2 chairs in front of his desk, which was next to the wall. His office was in the front of his home on the 1st floor. He held meetings there when people from Goldratt Group needed to talk to him, or in the room with more chairs and several bookcases, which was right next to his office. Eli decided that my next test was to write level 5 of the Transformational Strategy and Tactic Tree, a powerful tool for strategic planning and execution for retailers. Note, later, several types of strategy and tactic trees were developed. The one we worked on at the time became known as a Transformational Strategy and Tactic Tree, TSTT. I briefly provide a description of the TSTT here for your understanding of what happened. The TSTT utilizes necessity and the sufficiency-based logic to explain how the goal of an organization can be achieved, or their high-level strategy. Level 1 of the TSTT consists of the high-level goal or strategy of the organization. Each level of the TSTT consists of one or more strategy and tactic pairs, further detailing how to achieve the goal, where strategy is the answer to the question what for, and tactic is the answer to the question how. Levels 4 and 5 present the implementation details and logic. At the time, and also note there's a footnote here, if you want to learn more about strategy and tactic trees, you can read my book, chapter in the Theory of Constraints Handbook, which is available for individual sale and purchase in the Amazon Kindle store. At that time, the only TSTT with level 5 was the one for organizations focused on project management. For about 90 minutes, Eli and I discussed the content of the first 6 steps of level 5 that corresponded to the first level 4 step. Basically, these steps would be the first ones taken to effectively implement TLC in a retail organization to dramatically improve its performance. We spoke about each step without focusing on the specifics of how to write it. After I was ready to start writing it by myself, he asked me if I thought Level 5 needed to be written. I hesitated to answer because I needed to figure out if he was joking. After looking closely at his face, I realized he was serious. I then responded, "Ellie, if you think Level 5 does not need to be written, you're delusional." I will never forget the look of shock on his face, followed some moments later by the somewhat stuttered response of, I'm not delusional. Then he became more convinced that I was clearly wrong in believing that Level 5 needed to be written. I pointed out to Ellie that my experience training consultants, both TOC experts and supply chain logistics implementers, as a faculty member of Goldratt Group, in addition to other interactions with others in the TOC community, led me to conclude that many did not fully understand how to effectively implement the TOC applications. Finally, the answer to the third question of how to cause the change had been effectively provided in the TSCTs. Ellie had pointed out in the goal that there's 3 management questions that need to be effectively answered to implement change successfully. What to change to, and how to cause the change. Ellie was still not convinced, so over the next day or so, he proceeded to test at least 5 top people in the Goldratt group with 2 questions derived of what would be written in Level 5 of the retailer TSCT. They struggled with their answers, and not one of them was able to correctly answer both the questions. Finally, he came into the kitchen where I was eating lunch with his wife, Biddy. He sat down and with a sigh said, "I accept. I'm delusional." We were thus even with titles since I was Cruella and he was now delusional. Here's a picture that was taken of me just prior to my becoming his apprentice, and a short biographical description of myself, which you can pause and read on your own at some other points in the future. And I've also included in this book sample, which will be posted in the very near future in the Amazon Kindle store as a free book sample, 12 discussion questions here. So these are some questions that you could answer or have discussions with other people just about reading this sample of my beginning of my book, On My Year with Ellie, that I've just now shared with you. So of course, since this is a video and audio recording, that you can pause this and check out the questions that I included here to give you some thoughts to think about what was written here and to have some interesting discussions with other people if you choose to do so. And then the last thing I provide here is pointing out that the book, when completed, will be published by Illuminatopia and offered for sale on our websites. To find out when it will be available, go to www.illuminatopia.com or .org. We are a for-profit organization which is owned by a 501c3 charity, not-for-profit organization. And there's a news blog there for the website, which will let you know when it's expected to come out. I also have a blog on there where I share short writings on various subjects. And there's different events posted on each website based on online seminars or other events that we're offering to achieve our goal of lighting the way to utopia. And also we have a guest portal with free downloads there. We'll be adding more in the future and soon be, sometime this year, setting up the member portal details and deciding what membership fee and possibly an individual usage fee in addition for special downloads of materials will be there as well. Also, please note that we do not believe in bombarding people with advertisements via our website or email. If you do sign up to be a guest user just by providing your email address, we occasionally send updates, information on what we're doing, programs that are being offered, but we know that all of us feel kind of overwhelmed with all the junk mail we get physically and in our spam folders, etc. A regular email that we just want to let you know what's going on, but not send messages too often or make you feel uncomfortable, that we're just trying to let you know what's going on and give you information that could help you bring the light back to your eyes and be more effective in your personal and professional lives. So thank you for joining me today or for viewing this video on the internet. I hope you've enjoyed this reading of my book, and we look forward to, would love to hear from you if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make about it. And I may not be able to respond to all of those, but I would definitely love to hear from you, and we'll get back to people if possible, or at least consider those ideas when putting the finishing touches on my book. And hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you.